Hello, everyone, welcome back to the World Conflict. Monitor, please subscribe and like my videos. Today, we're diving deep into a dramatic scenario. Belarus in revolt. Army defection triggers nationwide uprising. Is Lukashenko losing control? We'll walk through every angle: the exterior, the visible cracks in the regime, the interior behind closed doors in Belarus's power structures, the performance, how events are playing out, safety features, risks, guardrails, threats, the unique selling points, what makes this scenario distinct, possible price, costs, losses, consequences, and then wrap up with a conclusion. To begin, set aside the idea that this is just another protest cycle. The notion of an army defection is dramatic. It suggests a fracture in the final line of defense for a regime. If even parts of the military withdraw loyalty, the state's ability to repress or project power can collapse quickly. But such a shift is rarely spontaneous. It reflects deep stress, missteps by leadership, and often external pressure. So let's see whether the signs support this dramatic thesis, or whether it's still largely speculative. From the exterior, public signals, protests, defections, chatter, we see a mix of growing unrest, symbolic acts of dissent, and rumors of cracks. Belarus has experienced repeated waves of protest since the controversial 2020 election, with citizens demanding change, holding mass rallies, and challenging Lukashenko's legitimacy. The authorities have responded with harsh repression, mass arrests, torture allegations, suppression of independent media, and silencing of dissidents. In recent years, the regime has also intensified efforts to purge officials whose loyalty is in doubt, to signal consequences for wavering. Some individual defections or resignations have been reported: security officers, lower-level personnel refusing to follow orders. But these remain isolated, not part of a broader, coordinated mutiny. You might also see signals in economic disruption, supply chain breakdowns, or local power centers slipping control. If regional governors, key industrial managers, or border units begin to resist, those are potent exterior cracks. But so far, the state retains control over major cities, control points, communications, and coercive apparatuses. Now turning to the interior, what's happening behind closed doors in command bunkers, security ministries, military headquarters, and presidential offices. This is where the real drama resides, and this is your big section. Inside the regime, there are three key fault lines to watch. 1. Military command loyalty. The strength of the regime rests ultimately on whether generals, division commanders, and elite units remain loyal. If one or several high-level commanders refuse orders or quietly back the opposition, that can become contagious. In many historical coups or regime collapses, the initial spark came when a crucial unit, e.g., armored divisions, the Guard, military intelligence, went over. So inside Belarus, if units in Minsk, near borders, or at key bases begin to withhold obedience, that would be a powerful internal signal. But loyalty is heavily guarded. Lukashenko has long invested in a security architecture that checks against internal betrayal, e.g., overlapping agencies, military, KGB/and KVD style security, internal troops, direct lines to key units, dividing power among competing elites so no single figure becomes too powerful. The regime likely monitors signal intercepts, officer behavior, communications, social media, family connections, and holds many incentives: promotions, wealth, privileges, and punishments, dismissal, arrest to keep loyalty in check. 2. Security ministries and secret services. These are the regime's nervous system. If KGB, Interior Ministry, internal security forces begin to fracture, leak, or refuse orders, that is extremely damaging. Even a partial split in the security apparatus can create zones of impunity for protest or escalation. The regime fears infiltration, dissent, or conspiracies, and so usually keeps these forces close, with loyalty vetted heavily, ideological training, and personal networks. Inside that, rivalries between agencies may emerge, e.g., military vs. security agencies, or different factions within, each calculating risks and opportunities. In moments of crisis, some of these factions might hedge their bets or start negotiating quietly with opposition groups. 3. Elite infighting, morale collapse, and fear in many regimes under stress. Internal morale and calculation become pivotal. If top officials believe the regime is increasingly untenable, they may begin positioning for a fallback, bargaining for safety, or switching sides opportunistically. If rumors spread that the regime will fall, some might defect preemptively. Psychological thresholds matter. Once a few small defections or public shifts occur, they can encourage more. Also, security forces on the ground rank, and file soldiers, border guards, police may be fatigued, resent harsh orders, e.g., shooting civilians, imprisoning neighbors, or fear being scapegoated. If orders become particularly brutal or command directives feel morally untenable, units might refuse or quietly stand down. Behind closed doors, uncertainty, mistrust, espionage, internal purges, and clandestine communication are ongoing. The interior is a cauldron of fear and ambition. The question is that cauldron close to boiling over, or is it still simmering under immense repression? From what's publicly available, there is no confirmed, credible mass defections from high-level command. The regime's internal security seems intact, but intelligence is opaque. The fact that observers continue to speculate about defections suggests the tension is simmering dangerously close to a tipping point, even if not yet fully triggered. Next, performance, how this theory is playing out in real time. We watch for indicators such as reports that certain military bases or units have refused orders, remained in barracks, or refused to move against protesters, local clashes, where military forces side with civilians, disruption in communications, interruption in chain of command regions moving under opposition control, municipal authorities shifting alignment, evidence of coordination among opposition forces and discontented elements in security, apparatus media leaks, social media posts from soldiers or officers speaking out, strikes, supply chain breakdowns, or infrastructure sabotage boosting civil momentum. So far we've seen protests remain high in certain periods, but the state's repression remains strong and centralized. There's no confirmed breakthrough where a whole garrison has declared for the opposition. Observers caution that many defection rumors are speculative or manipulated. In some modeling, the regime has adopted preemptive strategies, removing questionable officers, reinforcing loyalty checks, intimidating potential dissenters, strict surveillance, and aggressively punishing leaks or mute dissent. These performance decisions slow or forestall a full collapse. Now, safety features, that is, mechanisms, defenses, and thresholds that could prevent the scenario from spiraling out of control for either side. Think of them as guardrails, risk factors, or failure modes. Deterrence and fear. The regime's record of brutal reprisals, arrests, torture, disappearances functions as a strong deterrent. Anyone considering switching sides must weigh personal risk. Redundancy and overlapping security systems, because Belarus likely uses overlapping security organs, military, internal troops, KGB, secret police. Even if one branch falters, others may compensate. Control of communication and media, state censorship, internet shutdowns, control of state media, disinformation campaigns. These are barriers against coordination among dissenters or the spread of revolutionary momentum. External backing. Russia. Lukashenko's regime depends heavily on Russian support for intelligence, security ties, financial aid, and as a geopolitical buffer. That support is a safety net. Divide and rule tactics. The regime can crack down regionally, offer concessions to some local elites, or co-opt moderates so that opposition remains fragmented. Rapid force projection. elite guard units, loyal mechanized forces, air force capability, special units. The regime may move swiftly to suppress nascent mutiny before it spreads. Plausible deniability and propaganda. The regime may treat early defections as targeted betrayal or foreign subversion, using narratives to delegitimize them, thus discouraging further defection. Escalation thresholds. If the opposition or defecting units push too quickly or aggressively, the regime may respond with overwhelming force, plunging the country into civil war, a high-risk scenario many defectors might avoid. These safety features delay or prevent full collapse unless multiple parts break down almost simultaneously. Next, unique selling points of this scenario. What makes the hypothesis that army defection triggers nationwide uprising in Belarus distinctive or compelling? It represents the dramatic shift from protest to regime decapitation. Once the army becomes non-monolithic, internal repression becomes very difficult. It forces the regime into binary choices, either crackdown or collapse. In a normal protest wave, the regime can adjust. With army fracture, options narrow. It serves as a rapid tipping point. Small cracks become cascading dynamics. It highlights power center vulnerability. The most secure institution, the military turning, is a sign that all other instruments of control, police, intelligence, media, are vulnerable too. It draws decisive external attention. Foreign powers may move faster to intervene, sanction, or support depending on how credible the change looks. It accelerates regime legitimacy collapse. If the interior of power is visibly collapsing, public belief in regime permanence erodes fast. Now, price i.e., cost, consequences, losses. What's at stake for all parties? Human cost, potential for violent clashes, casualties, civil war, reprisals, mass arrests, forced disappearances. Institutional breakdown. Government functions, law enforcement, judiciary, public services could collapse regionally or entirely. Economic havoc. Capital flight, sanctions, supply chain disruption, collapse of currency, inflation, unemployment. Geopolitical spillover. Intervention by Russia or neighboring states, border crisis, refugee flows, destabilization of regional security. Factional conflict. Internal rivalry among defectors, opposition groups, regional power brokers, risk of fragmentation and civil war rather than unified transition. Legitimacy struggle. Opposition needs to quickly build international recognition, manage transitional governance, avoid vacuum exploitation. Backlash and reaction. The regime's core loyalists may fight violently, scuttle infrastructure, destroy archives, sabotage transitions. Reprisal cycles. Even if the regime falls locally, counter-evolutionary forces or loyalist counterattacks might reassert control. Given this huge price, many defectors or opposition leaders may hesitate until they see undeniable momentum or protection guarantees. Finally, conclusion. While the idea of army defection triggering a nationwide Belarusian uprising is dramatic and compelling, the current evidence suggests it remains a possibility rather than an actuality. The regime retains strong internal controls, overlapping security structures, and deterrent capabilities. No confirmed mass defection from high-level military leadership has been verified publicly. The interior signals point to anxiety and pressure, but not collapse. However, this is a scenario worth watching very closely. If you begin to see reports of entire military units refusing orders or defecting, top commanders publicly distancing themselves from Lukashenko, local governments or provinces rejecting central commands, communications networks going down or showing cracks, and coordinated opposition military movements, then you may indeed be witnessing the moments just before a seismic shift. In that case, the regime's safety features might be overwhelmed, and the balance could tilt rapidly. Finally, in such a situation, much depends on external dynamics, especially Russia's posture. the ability of opposition to organize quickly, and whether the defection is disciplined or chaotic. So the question is not whether an army defection could trigger a revolution. It can, but whether Belarus is yet at that tipping point, and at present we're near but not past that threshold.